Hello, I am W.G. Warner, and this is the official Finger Lakes and Authors and Readers Experience. I am here with one of the most well-respected authors on the Finger Lakes has to offer. She is most well known for her young adult work, such as Over the Edge and Before I Knew, but she has worked in other genres, such as her children's book series featuring the character of Chance the Dog, and her adult romance novel, Attic Letters. Many of her books are set in the Finger Lakes, and she doesn't write in the setting ignorantly. She grew up in the area and has chosen to move back to the Finger Lakes recently. I am here with Laurie Adams. Hello, Laurie Gifford Adams.
Hello, George. WG.
Uh, Today we are going to be mostly talking about your book, Over the Edge. Which, by the way, I was going to say was a really interesting read. I mean, I grew up on a lot of YA novels, but I mean, you probably know, back in my time, it was mostly of the fantastical, like Harry Potter, Percy Jackson. So it was really interesting reading a very grounded one for the first time.
Yeah, it's a contemporary, so there isn't any kind of fantasy in it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah. Even with it not being a fantasy, you still have that mystical feel of like the country and the even the stuff with like Willow and her animals. Yeah. Alright. So let's get into this. So the first question I was thinking of was and this was actually based on my own experiences growing up, as someone who with a neurodivergency, read about this, and you write about Dylan's the main character Dylan's little brother Eric, who has autism. Did you meet with people with this disability, or have you grown up with it, or something, or how did you make sure to write the disability authentically?
Well, my interest in it started because I had special training during my years teaching in Connecticut on working with students with autism. And I had students in my class with autism, and I was very aware of how they were perceived by others and also how they interacted with one another. And when I started writing the book, I actually connected with someone from Oregon, a family whose son has autism. And they were my beta readers, so to speak. As I was going through the book, I would send them chapters whenever Eric was involved. And I'd ask them, is it authentic? What do I need to do to make this authentic? And I had done a really good job. It turns out I had learned enough through my trainings to understand the interactions pretty well, and they also had a dog that was a service dog for their son, so they were able to give me every perspective as far as getting the dog, the training of the dog, and working with their child with the dog.
Okay. You know, as like I said previously, I grew up with a neurodivergency. I knew there was a problem with people who would just expect to write a disability and know how to do it 100%. So I'm incredibly glad that you actually went ahead and talked with people, spoke with people. I think that is one of the most important things you can do. And I even go in this later, but one of the things I thought you did, which was really interesting, was show that Eric actually almost saves Dylan at the end of the book, which was really fun because it really takes away from the stereotype of the neurodivergent and special needs kid who's always needing to be saved. Now this kid actually goes up and saves the kid.
Yes, exactly. And I did that on purpose because I wanted to flip it around, as you said,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not what the reader is expecting. And I think that in so many ways, it shows how heroic anyone can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, that was one of the most actually just special parts of the book that I think. All right, on to the second question. So now we go to the main antagonist of the book, Brock, the brother of Willow and the bully of the main character Dylan. Uh, So, who is the person that inspired Brock, or was there someone who inspired Brock?
I'm going to say that initially it was just the situation that I cannot stand bullying. I get really frustrated when bullying is passed off as kids will be kids, or it's not that bad. It doesn't really hurt anything. Nobody's being hurt by it. That kind of attitude really frustrates me a lot. I am so anti bullying. But I did have a particular student one year who I learned of how he bullied his sister. And he had a twin sister, and that bothered me a lot. And so when I was writing it, I'd often think of their situation because Brock and Willow are brother and sister, and the fact that bullying can take place within the families as well, and that's not all right either. It's not just kids being kids or sibling rivalry. No, there's a line that you have to draw with all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Like, I feel like a lot of abuse within siblings is so overlooked, and yeah, like I just feel I wish like more people looked into that and didn't just like think of it as just, oh look, it's just a brother being, a typical brother to the kid, and actually look more deeper. I mean, yeah, it's like I was looking and reading the like when I was reading that, like that part like kind of almost shocked me in a way when I was first, because I was like, wow, I didn't realize we were going to go into something that deep in a YA novel and a young adult novel.
Hmm.
But you can really go into deep stuff, and it makes sense. When you're a young adult, you still are going through dark and traumatic stuff. It's just it is going to be, well, a lot of people overlook it, and yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I just the audience for that book is mainly young adult, and they're the ones who need to see that message because I think that they don't see themselves in it unless it's pointed out to them until they're adults. And then I've noticed that a lot of adults are looking back on their lives and realizing that they were bullies, and they at the time they didn't see themselves that way. They just saw themselves as a tough person, and a tough person and a bully can be the same thing.
yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I've dealt with one of my friends actually recently was me and him. We kind of realized that you can be both the victim and a bully. Also, like he was being bullied in like school, so then he would go out and then become more of a, what he said was, he said, "Oh, well, I'm dealing with this stuff, so I kind of have almost the right to do this,
Mm.
to be more of a tougher, be more of a, uh, get more of a chip on your shoulder."
Uh
But
huh.
you truly are, you still are being a bad person, and you need to learn to not be that way. So yeah, I think that is almost incredibly correct, and I feel like people need to learn that more. Is that you never have the right to be uh above someone else or act above someone else.
Right. I agree with you.
All right, all right. So you mentioned before already about the dog that inspired Scout, but uh, is there any more information on that? Or did you look into more of the other animals
I
other than a dog?
No, I didn't look into other animals. I think that a lot of it is that the teacher in me is always looking for ways to teach. And people don't understand oftentimes the role of service dogs in people's lives. And so this was my way of teaching by giving a story where one of the characters had a service dog and watching how that affects the family as well as the person who receives it. And it's not inspired by any particular dog. However, when my husband and I were first married, and today is our 42nd anniversary, by the way, but
Congrats.
thank you, when we were first married, our first dog was a golden retriever, and they're very smart. They can be extremely gentle and just make great service dogs. And the boy that I modeled Eric after from Oregon, he had a Labrador Retriever, a yellow lab.
Uh, yeah, I mean, service dogs I feel like are some of the most judged or just service animals in general. I remember back in high school, there was like people who were first getting their service animals, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, what, you get to bring your dog to school or something?" And I'm saying I was even back then, and being like, "No, this person's has it for a reason, for a medical reason," and a lot of people would just blow me off. But yeah,
Mhm.
I feel like it's just like something people need to learn that this isn't just like bringing your animal to school. This is an actual medical need.
Yes.
So yeah. Uh, so we are very much shown Willow's love for animals, and even to a fantastical level, where she's like in the woods, she's going out like in she's going out trying to save that horse and everything. Where did you get this idea for this character trait?
There is a little bit of me in Willow. When I was a child, I wanted to be a veterinarian, or so I thought. And my first field period at Cuca College was actually working with a veterinarian just to see if that's really a path I could take. And I realized that there are aspects of it that I just would never be able to handle. And so it wasn't the right route for me. However, I was the one who was saving things, not to Willow's extent, because technically what Willow was doing was illegal because there are rehabbers who are trained for that kind of thing. And just Joe Schmo off the street shouldn't be trying to rehab animals because you just don't know enough. You may think you're doing the right thing, but if you haven't been trained in that, hand the animal over to someone who has been.
I mean, yeah, that's why I felt like I liked Willow's character because like she was really a morally great character. Like all her heart's always in the right place, but she does do stuff that is either illegal or even morally wrong. But even just out of plain ignorance, that's why I've always, or at least when I was reading it, I was always in loved Willow as a character.
Yeah, good.
All right. Uh, so we see a lot of this almost culture shock with Dylan as he moves from the city to the small Finger Lakes area town that he's at. Is that something that happened to you, or is that something you've seen? And like,
It is not. I grew up on a dairy farm, so writing about the farm aspect of it is very easy for me. And of course, the Finger Lakes because I grew up in the Finger Lakes. But I think that it was just fun for me as a writer to write a character who is thrown into this world that he knows nothing about. He's come from this totally different world where everything is right at his fingertips. He has all of these friends around him. And then to suddenly be thrown out in the country would be shocking because what do you do out in the country? Where do you ride your bike? I mean, you can ride your bike. I did it when I was growing up, but it's not like you can ride around the corner and your friend is there. My closest friend was 2 miles away from me growing up. So for me, it was fun to write that character. And I think that the fact that you want a character to grow throughout the book, and I felt like he grew. He eventually came to realize that there are positives about both places.
yeah, definitely. I mean, so I grew up in rural upstate New York, also like not exactly the Finger Lakes area, but still very rural area,
Hmm.
and I completely related to that. Like I've never been uh more than like a few miles away from a friend, and yeah, I mean, I felt like it was very much uh completely like written right to my childhood, at least when I remember it. But it's also like I felt like even then, like the character of Dylan, like being it kind of almost recontextualizes your own childhood and your own upbringing because it kind of fantasizes about your area. It's like shows it as this new area, and you get to see, okay, I guess this part of my area that I live is a bit strange, but in my mind, it's just not because I've grown up here. Like, yeah, there's a bunch of horses. What do you mean? Why are you so obsessed about that? I've seen
Yes.
these horses since I was two.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, it definitely does do that in a way.
Yeah.
Like, I always thought it would be interesting to kind of do a flip side of that, have a character from like a small country. I mean, you always see that with Hallmark movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the with the city girl going to the country. I thought it would always be interesting if there was a girl from a country moving into a city for the first
Yeah.
time, and
And
then
and see, I probably wouldn't be the best author to write that because yes, when I graduated from CUCA and moved to Connecticut, I was living in a small city, but I didn't have the childhood experience there. My kids did. And so I guess I could write vicariously through their experience, but I didn't feel like I could get the same depth of with that as knowing what it was like to grow up in the country and and adding that to Dylan's experiences. And
I
of
would say that's
course, oh, sorry,
oh,
go
sorry.
ahead.
No, you could go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, of course, the fact that there were times when through my childhood I thought, boy, the city people, I feel like they look down on us for living in the country and that our life isn't as rich as theirs because we live way out here. And I just wanted to show that no, both lives have their value, or both lifestyles, I should say.
I mean, yeah. First of all, that is what I really appreciate about you as an author is that you write what you know. You don't try and write something that you're ignorant about, or not, or at least when you do write something that you don't know necessarily about, you do a lot of research into it.
I do. I do a lot of research. I had to do a lot of research for attic letters in particular. And I had to do a lot of research about service dogs to understand when they're used and where you can get them. I
Mhm.
have a lot of research on all of that.
And yeah, that's really great. And also onto your point about the city and the people and the judgment between both of them, I would say I definitely had that experience growing up in the country.
Uh
A lot
huh.
of people were like, "Oh, that's just a city. That's just the city. The city sucks. I hate the city." And I'm like, I mean, I'll say I'm a country kid, but I always had this like I would rather have grown up in the city, or I would have rather have done this if I like think about it a lot. But I realized like as I grow up, I was like, there I may have done better academically or even just job wise and work wise if I grew up in a city, but also I would have missed out on some of the best experiences I've had growing up in a city instead of a country because like even growing up in a country, it really I would take these walks in my backyard, which is a we have a massive backyard, and just being able to walk through the woods and experience nature, I feel like was some of the most important, almost meditative things I've been through.
Yes.
Through.
Yep.
So yeah, I completely agree. There is goods on both sides. All right, so this question, I mean, I even highlighted it because I didn't know if you would want to answer it, but the character Willow, she deals with a lot of self doubt and people pleasing for that character.
Mm-hmm.
Character, and for a character who's such like a good kid, who's such a good person, but has this much self hatred, I thought it was super interesting because, like, I mean, I could relate to my own self and also a lot of people I know, but is there this trait inspired by anyone you know, or and how did you deal with that specific thing, specific mindset?
I think because I was and still am a people pleaser in many ways, that was another trait that was easy for me to write about. And while I feel that I was quite confident in my childhood, I saw other people who were not as confident and wished that I could instill some confidence in them. Were there times when I doubted myself? Absolutely. Uh, you would be arrogant to think otherwise. But I just felt like you had Dylan, who to me is a confident character, um, offset by someone who doesn't have the same confidence, and so he has something to bring to her as well.
Yeah. I mean, so again, like I said, growing up as because I did relate to that with that aspect of Willow's character of the people pleasing, and I mean, we're growing up in a society, and don't get me wrong, I'm no Ayn Rand ethical egoist or anything, but we are still grown up in a society where we're told we need to help everyone, put everyone above yourself. But in a way, that is a toxic mindset because you can't help everyone if you're not helping yourself first. And I had to learn that growing up. Like it wasn't until like high school where I realized I can't help my friend out or I can't help you out if I'm not helping myself. And
Mm.
then later on, I realized I can't even help you out unless you're not helping yourself also.
Yes.
So I think that's just such an interesting, at least maybe, I don't know if that's what exactly you were going for, but that's kind of what I got out of that character.
I could go with that. Yep.
Okay. You know, so we see a conflict. This one was with Dylan and Willow, right? And you right, there's a lot of conflicts throughout the book between Dylan and Willow. And how, so what is going through your mind when you're writing a two characters that are both good characters or supposed to be seen as good characters, and are what are you avoiding and what are you making sure is there?
Well, I think in reality, our lives are full of conflict. Whether conflict in our lives, whether it lasts 10 seconds or it lasts days. It depends on the depth of the conflict, of course. But I think that we don't always understand how to deal with conflict. And a story, when as an author, you need to keep in mind that if everything is hunky dory and lovely, when you have a fictional novel, the reader's going to get bored quickly because they're going to say, well, I have nothing to look forward to being taken care of or solved. So the conflicts help engage the reader because then the reader is invested in the character and hoping for the best outcome for them. So that's why they're going to be peppered throughout the story like that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I really like how you say like life is full of conflict, so books should be full of conflict. And yeah, yeah, and I could perfectly agree. I will say like your at least this specific book, I feel like it's very realistic and it's like the like even with some of the more fantastical elements, I could still see it happening in real life, and I still think of people that I know in real life who's probably done similar stuff to that.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, like I will say, you have a very realistic way of writing, even with the fantastical elements. All
Thank
right.
you.
So onto the villain Brock. So he's done some might say cartoonishly evil things, but you do still keep him grounded. You still keep him realistic. You still keep him not one dimensional. How do you make sure to do that with your villains? Or is there something? Is that something you're afraid of doing, or are you fine with having a villain who's one dimensional?
No, it's so, I love the way you just put that question, because it made me stop and really think about it. And I particularly liked the comment about in some ways some of these things are cartoonish because I thought, yeah, you're right. That that is how that would fit in. But when I was looking at Brock, I was thinking about him being a kid. And in my mind, if I were a bully and I was trying to extract um, revenge or whatever, I would do something much bigger than what he did. But he was just going for those little things that are just on the edge of being getting in trouble. He can still get some satisfaction from knowing that he's caused a reaction and a negative reaction from somebody, but he doesn't, for the most part, go so overboard that like you're calling the police or something like that. Now, by the same token, do I feel like social services or someone like that should have been involved sooner? Absolutely. Willow deserved to be protected from her brother who was living out his frustrations. He didn't know how to deal with his frustrations, so he took it out on her and others. And I just wanted to show that, deep down, he's not a horrible person. He's a victim of his circumstances and being a kid and not understanding why his life is the way it is.
Hmm. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's this really incredible moment at the end of the book where they're on a cliff and Eric is trying to save him in a way. And then he says, after he saves him, he's like, "Why did you save someone like me? Why do I deserve to be saved?" And I was like, wow, that actually kind of hit like hard there. And I was like, wow, that's so. Because like, I thought when he was talking with him, I thought he was about to just either cuss him out or yell at him or something, be like, "I hate you." But no, it was like something super emotional, super sad, and like you could understand a lot more of Brock through that chapter.
Yeah. I mean, Brock is a character who doesn't feel like he deserves better. That he has that narrative in his head, and it's so absolutely not true. That yes, there are some horrific people in this world who probably should not be saved from the cliff, but he's a kid. He's a kid who's trying to find his way, and I think um, that Dylan and Eric kind of understand that. Dylan has a bigger worldview than the other characters because of where he's come from and all of his opportunities. But I think in the end, he realized that he, as in Dylan, isn't the kind of person that can just let somebody fall. That that he has the ability to step in and save somebody. So he
Yeah,
did.
I mean, thinking of me as a kid, I don't know if I would have done the same thing as Dylan. I don't know if I would have saved someone who was just being so. I don't know about that, which is why I got super interested. And him as like showing this like because like I feel like so many people have a black and white mentality. Have like, oh, this person did this terrible thing, and for a while, so now they never deserve redemption. They never deserve anything anymore, and they deserve to fall off the cliff, figuratively speaking.
Yeah.
So that is so it's interesting. I feel like people get stuck in that mindset, and I've always considered myself a realist in a way, where I'm like, I feel like if a person has shown and that they can rehabilitate themselves and become a better person, I feel like they should be able to
Hmm.
be allowed to do that. And yeah, that's why I find it very interesting. You kind of have a good yin and yang mentality when writing that. All right, on to the next question. So we see Dylan struggle with a few dilemmas. Um, specifically to himself. So, how do you write a man versus self narrative as opposed to a man versus external force like nature and man versus man, for example?
Well, I think it is easier to write an external conflict for sure, because when you're writing a man versus self conflict, you have to really get deeply into the character's head and think about what is their motivation for whatever they did or whatever they're struggling with, what has caused that struggle for them, and what are the different ways that they might deal with that struggle. And so, when I was in college, when I had electives that I could take, I always took psychology courses because I've always been interested in how does how does the brain work? What makes people do what they do and think the way they do? And so, as a writer, it plays right into that for me because I can explore all of that and come up with a narrative that to me makes sense for a particular character because no one knows the character better than I do.
That that just yeah that makes a lot of sense. And as someone going to college and wanting to be a writer, I might actually look into taking more psychology. I mean, for me, something that really helped, at least with my writing, was philosophy classes.
Mm-hmm.
That helped me a lot. So, and that kind of goes hand in hand. So I might actually next semester, if I get the chance, join in the psychology class and check that out.
Adolescent development, any of those are really good for this kind of thing.
Cool. All right,
Okay, it started.
all right. Mine started. All right.
Okay.
And we're back. Okay. So when uh when right in the confrontation, like near the end, we get this giant confrontation. It's a storm, and it's right by a cliff, and we see Dylan, the hero, versus Brock, the villain, and we get this uh conflict. When you're writing that, do you debate between doing a dialogue heavy versus a interaction heavy, or do you like to have a healthy balance between both?
I think it's important to have a balance between both because it's good to have the inner dialogue of the characters, particularly a main character. Whichever character has the most at stake, and even though you would think that Brock is the one who's ready to fall, that he would be the one with the most at stake. Really, it's Dylan, because Dylan is the one who has the difficult decision to make. Does he save Brock or does he just save himself? And so I think having that exchange back and forth in dialogue between the two characters lets us know what each of them is thinking, but then having that inner dialogue for Dylan of what else is going on with him as he's trying to make that decision is super important. But then having that tension of the thunder and lightning, because now you have that peril from nature and you've got this steep rock cliff, which, by the way, is taken from a gully down in Branchport that is huge. And it doesn't look exactly like that, but I just
It
manipulated
was your
it to fit what
inspiration.
I needed. But anyway, having you have the man versus self conflict, you have the man versus man conflict, you have the man versus nature conflict. Um, if I thought about it, there could possibly be man versus society in there. I don't know, but yeah, there's to get that tension in there, you need to have more than one conflict going on
Mm,
at once, because the reader needs to feel like, oh my gosh, how can they possibly get out of this with all those things going against them?
okay. Yeah, I mean that's great. Great. Yeah, I mean, like as someone who wants to get into writing, that's a very helpful thing because, like, I mean, the way at least growing up in elementary and middle school, we're always taught there's almost only one conflict in a book. Not only one conflict, but we are taught there's one conflict that's throughout the book.
Hmm.
But what I've learned growing up in high school and even in college is that there's a whole like tree root system of conflicts that lead up to this big tree,
Yes.
and a lot of people need to realize. Well, I feel like we need to be taught that a little more in high school. Is that about these conflicts? Is it's not just one fight; it's a bunch of fights, and yeah,
And sometimes people think that a conflict is a verbal fight or a physical fight. And no, there are a lot of other kinds of conflicts besides those two.
I mean, even in the book itself, we see uh, a man versus self with Dylan when he's doubting himself or when he's doubting his relationship with Willow.
Yep.
So we definitely get to see like a version of a non-physical or non fight way of someone who's dealing with a conflict.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And it's
yeah,
it's called rooting interest. You want the reader to root for at least one character, if not more than one character. And I think in Over the Edge, you root for more than one character for different reasons.
yeah. I mean, today, to be honest, like for a lot of the characters, obviously, Brock is a bad person, but like in a way, you're still like saying, "I hope this guy gets better," or
Hmm.
"I hope these people get better." Like, I don't feel like there's like one person where I'm like, I don't like this person. Like, like as someone who does read a little bit of this type of fiction, I kind of had ideas going in starting it. Like I thought, for example, Dylan's dad would have been revealed to be like a terrible person, but no, he ended up being a good person also. And I'm like, it's very in a way realistic to the world around you, because like a lot of people again have this, there are bad people and good people, but really it's just we're all humans and we're all messed up in our own ways.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. This is the final question I'll be asking.
Okay.
So, and this is actually goes into the cover of the book. On there, they have a statement that says, it says he needs to protect his brother, win the girl, and stand up to the bully. Can one kid do it all? And as I was reading the book, I realized that really those statements in a way were all put on their head in a way. I mean, like, in instead of him having to protect his brother Eric, he has to Eric ends up protecting him. Instead of winning the girl, he has to kind of stand all away from her at the end of the book, and because she has to get deal with her protect the services, he can't be there for her, because if he is, then she'll get into a bad spot still. And then he does stand up to the bully, but he saves the bully at the end. I was just wondering, did you do that on purpose, or when you were? I don't know if you have a play in designing the cover, or
I did. I did have input into designing the cover, and I am the one who came up with those three lines. But I'll be honest with you, it wasn't until I read what you wrote that I thought, "Oh my gosh, that's so true." Every one of those is flipped around, and it wasn't a conscious decision on my part. I think that's just my style
mm-hmm.
that of writing. That's what I'm
Yeah,
going to do. I'm going to lay it out as here's what the big thing is, what he needs to do. But boy, is he going to learn some lessons.
yeah, and really, I feel like that's what I've appreciated about your style is that when you go into a genre and go into a new type of story, you don't just do that story or do something that you've seen a million times. You change it. You give it some spice in a way. That's I love that.
Oh, good. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and this we're about to hit that time. I feel like it's about time to say our goodbyes, I guess.
Well,
So
I really appreciate this, George. I just loved your thought provoking questions and just how deep they went. It made me, as the author, think deeper again about those characters because once you've moved on to your next books, it's interesting how those things pretty much leave your mind until someone else brings them up and says, "Well, remember when this happened?" and so, or this person reacted this way. It just it gave me a new appreciation for the book.
thank you. I mean, I will say also, your book gave me, in a way, a similar way, a new appreciation for my upbringing. I mean, growing up in the country, I always kind of resented it. I hated being a country kid. I wish to been in a city where I could be more ambitious, but reading about it, seeing it from the eyes of a kid who grew up in the city and now seeing it for the first time, it kind of put almost a new veil on me, and I was like, this is amazing. I actually really like growing up in the country. I mean, I still would have rather had more of a social environment, but still, it definitely made me appreciate it more, and I feel like that was a great story. Thank you again, Laurie Gifford Adams, for showing up to the official Finger Lakes Authors and Readers Experience podcast. As well, please check out Over the Edge on her website, www.lauriegiffordadams.com. And as well, please check out her other book series, such as the Chance Adventure series, Chance's Lucky Day, Chance Explores the Farm, Chance Explores the Beach, and Chance Explores the Firehouse, as well as her other young adult novels such as Paw Prints in the Snow, Before I Knew, Find an Atticus, and You Can Trust Me, as well as her mainstream romance book, Attic Letters, Secrets of Love and War, and her internet safety book, www.areyouindanger.net. As well, please check out more about the Finger Lakes Authors Readers Experience at the website F.L.A.R.E, FLAIREexperience.org.